So today we're going to be talking about intimacy. And for most people, intimacy is physical.
Mm-hmm. So there's a misconception that sex equals intimacy. And that just isn't true.
No. Because here we're talking about intimacy in terms of communication levels.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having a debate about using the word sex. So for everybody that's uncomfortable using that word, please get into your comfy sofas, get your popcorn out, and let's go.
So we're more thinking that actually culturally there is this taboo about saying that word and using that word. So we're thinking what word could we use instead? But we couldn't come up with something more appropriate. What we're trying to say is that actually this is totally PG content in the sense that we're not going to be talking about anything raunchy. We're not going to be talking about anything explicit. But we're going to be talking about the difference between intimacy and the physical contact, which we call sex. Okay? So there is a big difference. And a lot of times people equate being physically active as being intimate and saying, oh, me and my partner are really intimate. Maybe we're physically active all the time. And then they equate having a great physical relationship to having a great marriage or a great relationship. And that isn't always true.
And that is actually called the Intimacy Coverup.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from a book, actually. Not sure who the author is, but...
So one preacher was preaching about intimacy in marriage and actually said, well, the way that they said intimacy was they're like, into me, see. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so deep.
It actually means how much you let people, how much of you let people see.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that obviously, you know, with this idea of like sharing yourself, how much do you let people see of you, which is how much intimacy you give them?
Yeah.
I guess that's a question.
So this book, The Intimacy Coverup, by Roger Hillestorm and Carolyn Hillestorm, talks about exactly that. So it talks about the 5 levels of intimacy. And we actually have a story about how I thought that we were like mega intimate in our relationship. And we shared everything and we were so totally close. And actually it was only during COVID when we were like forced to be in the same house for such a long time.
Even though we spent the past 3, 5, 10, 11 years together.
Yeah, we were married for like 10 years by this point. 10 years, I tell you. And I started, I was like, oh, I really want to know what the intimacy cover-up is all about. And I looked at like the depths of intimacy and the 5 levels of intimacy that I talked about in this book. And then I realized I was at like a 5. Like I was sharing everything with Mark, like everything. And he was at like a 2.
I guess the people are wondering, wait, hang on. Everybody's wondering, what are these 5 levels of intimacy?
Dude, imagine being married to somebody for 10 years and your intimacy level is a 2. Okay.
So, at level 1, this is what it is. At level 1, you're only sharing superficial reports, which means, for example, you're talking about random things
like
that
the weather
are unrelated to your life specifically. So when you meet somebody, instead of talking about how are you, what you say is, oh, it's a lovely day, isn't it?
Lovely day.
Lovely day.
That's the basics, you know, when you chat with somebody in the shop. That's level 1.
Exactly.
Then you've got level 2.
Then you've got level 2. At this stage, you're actually just sharing other people's opinions.
Now, this is really crucial because Mark does share. Oh, now I'm out in you to your level of intimacy with other people.
Okay. That's fine.
But guys, this is also in terms of your relationships with other people. It's not just marital relationships. So, like third-party perspectives, right? So it's like Mark will say, "I read this book, and Hillestorm says blah 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 blah." And you're thinking you're having this really deep conversation with this person because, oh my gosh, they're sharing all this deep knowledge and blah, blah, blah. That's level 2.
Well, actually, in context, what that actually means, for example, if you're sharing level 2, relating a situation to you, so like you said, you just say, oh, in the book, it says this.
So you're protecting your
own opinions and how you feel about things.
And then level 3 is when you take that third-party information, but then put your own personal opinion to it. So you say like, oh, Hillestorm says this, and I think this or that.
So it's after you've done some reflection and journaling. And then you sort of come back with, okay, actually, this is how I feel about that, and this is what I think. And you're able to have a conversation around that.
That's true. I feel like sometimes you would go to that level, but like mostly you'd just be on the level 2. Like, Bethel, I was reading this book. I think you should read it. Like, okay.
And then level 4 is all about my personal history. So at this stage, you're actually connecting the dots of, like Beth was talking about the book, that intimacy level, and then you're relating it to maybe your past and how it's had an impact on you, and how actually maybe you want to change things going forward.
Yeah, but it does say that in this level, you still have like a guard in the sense that you can say, oh, but that was my past. I'm not like that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you know what I mean? You can make an excuse for it because like, oh, that was in the history or that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And then
it's not my fault. It's all in the past.
Exactly. And then the fifth level of intimacy.
So level 5. At this stage, you're actually sharing your very own feelings about things. And most importantly, it's your emotional reactions.
The emotional reactions to situations. I was actually saying to Mark, I was like, I feel like we're sharing like level 4 or 5 with our viewers. So comment in the box below. Just put 4 or 5. Or actually put 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. What you think in terms of how much we're sharing with you about ourselves. I feel like we're pretty intimate with our viewers. I feel like they know a lot.
Telling you, oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is intense intimacy. Into us. Intimacy. I like that.
Intimacy. Yeah.
So yeah, we wanted to share that with you guys because it's really, really crucial to have a self-evaluation on your relationship. Where are you at? This is also crucial for people who are not married. So really, really important to like think that actually when you meet somebody, especially for somebody you've met, let's say you've met somebody on a first date or you've met somebody at a club or whatever, and you end up being physically, I'm not going to say intimate, you end up having physical contact with that person, and then you all of a sudden have all this rush of oxytocin hormones that comes with that, which is the body's natural reaction, which is supposed to be used in marriage to bond you together and make you love each other. So you have all of that.
As strength for the journey.
Yeah.
To overcome all the obstacles that you're going to meet along the way.
Exactly. So you have those chemical reactions in your body because your body's going to have those reactions.
Well, I was just thinking about something else. It might seem unrelated, but I think a lot of the times we all wear masks.
So Dr. Newman, you're saying that everybody wears a mask?
That's correct, Wendy. We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
And there's a conversation around why we wear these masks is because either we've been hurt in the past and we don't want to hurt other people, or we just have fear of the other people might actually do us harm.
And that's huge because that's talked about as well in the book in terms of like having sex outside of marriage and how that can harm you, and how actually when you're having these physical relationships which actually haven't gone through the 5 levels of intimacy, you're giving yourself to this other person. You're forming soul ties with this person. We'll have to do a separate video on that. But we did talk about it a little bit in terms of the emotional love bank, which we'll put the link to the video. And you're forming a love bank for somebody who you really know nothing about. Nothing. So you have like a 0 level of intimacy, or maybe like a 1 because you're like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I love the song, and all of a sudden you're being physical.
Do you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about all the guy relationships that I have. How many times do guys just talk about, oh, nice car,
just like
but
very
nobody
basic.
really asks, so how are you doing on the inside? What's going on? A lot of my friends, I tend to ask them, so what are you working on right now? Just to kind of get a picture of where they're going and how maybe you might be able to support them on that journey. And a lot of the times, to be fair, I talk to some guys and I just ask them, how are you? And they say, dude, I am super stressed out. And that's somebody taking off their mask and saying, intimacy, see all of me, all of my broken bits and all of the bits that might need mending. Maybe you might be the person to actually support them in that.
And that reminds me of my favorite book, which Mark didn't know.
That's got a favorite book.
I have a favorite book called I Ain't Much Baby, But I'm All That I've Got. And we'll do another review on that in a different video.
Yeah, that's
But
wow.
he talks about this as well. And he says, you know what? We're always at this level 1 of intimacy and we're not really sharing anything with people. If people say, how are you? You just go, I'm fine, whatever. Like you just try and brush it off. But actually, when do we stop and go, I'm not fine. I'm not okay.
And it's funny you say that because not everybody's okay sharing themselves for whatever reason. But I think, when you start living at that level, what you will find is you will have a richer experience of life.
You start having better relationships with people, and you start forming friendships that are actually going to bond you, because very quickly you'll figure out whether this person is worth having in your life or not. Because when they say, how are you? And you go, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Actually, this is going on in my life. Their reaction or their response to, in fact, this is how I actually got one of my best friends, by the way, because I was going through a really down period in my life. And she texted me, and she was
who's
like,
this?
This is Taida.
Oh, right, okay,
yeah. And she texted me, and at that time I was masking a lot, and I would never share anything. But I was reading that book, and I was like, you know what?
I'm thinking about the mask. Yeah.
And I wouldn't share anything, but she kept like gently asking me how I was, and when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna give it a try and see how this person responds. Because normally when I go, oh, not okay, people just kind of go, oh, God will do it, or I'll pray for you, or some like really shallow level 1 intimacy stuff. And like she was just there, like going really slowly, you know, talking to me about what was going on and like supporting me. And then halfway through the text conversation, she's like, can I call you? And I was like, oh, I don't really feel like I can talk to you right now. It lasted such a long time because obviously that was like the first conversation, and I was like, I'm not really ready for a call. She's like, that's fine. And she kept texting me. She wasn't pushed away from me not being comfortable for a call. And I literally went on a long walk, texting. And eventually I was like, do you know what? You can call. Because she actually, within one conversation, was able to break through all the 5 levels of intimacy. I'm shouting you out. I am shouting you out. No, but seriously, like Sister Ida is like my big sis, but that's a way that you can see that actually within one conversation you can go right to level 5.
But yeah, I was going to say, how does this affect us in our marriage?
Us, okay. So the story we go back to when I figured out that he was at level 2, sometimes 3. Go on then, Mark. Tell them, why were you not intimate with me?
Well, I guess the reason for me is that I find that sometimes when I share really sensitive information with Bethel, she overreacts. And so...
Do I still overreact sometimes?
I think there's been significant improvement over the years. We've worked on this whole...
Once I realised I was at level 2, I was like, gosh, I need to do something to get to level 5.
Yeah. Because say, for example, I came to Bethel and I really wanted to share something at level 5. Because obviously, just bear in mind, level 5, you're talking about really intimate stuff that's really sensitive. And a lot of the times, because you're sharing your true self, because we're talking about intimacy, right? Because you're sharing your true self, you're at that vulnerable point where if somebody doesn't actually handle that with care, it could really affect you. It
can hurt you.
And so, you know, I bring really, really sensitive stuff to Bethel sometimes, and I'll be like, oh, Bethel, I'll just share something because I read this thing in the book, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm at that place at level 5. Here's some information, Bethel, that I think, you know what to do with. And then she'd just be like...
No, but I think also the reason I was like that is because of jealousy. So I'm going to out myself.
Ooh.
So in the beginning of our relationship, I was very, very jealous over Mark. Like,
even though we were married.
Extremely jealous. Even though he's mine. And
I know.
I get to go home with him every day.
So you want to be
I want her. I want him all to myself. And so obviously forming friendships was difficult and is a difficult part for me because of people hurting me over periods of time in my life. It's something I'm working on though. I am actively working on it.
You've got to give Bethel credit though. She's got a ton of friends, and what are you talking about? You know.
No, I've been working on it, Mark. When I realized that I had that issue, I've been working on it. Anywho, so that was the issue. I was mad jealous. So anytime you come and tell me something, not just jealous of friends, but like if you tell me like, oh, I had this bad thought or this kind of thing, I would be like, what? I can't believe it. And I would have this big reaction. And then that's when he was like, oh, I can't really share anything with my wife. That's like, so I've had some serious reflection, guys, and I've been working on it. And I feel like now you do actually share your feelings with me. I don't always react in the right way, but you still do. And I said to him, like, you have to push me to a place where I am reacting properly and I'm learning. Because if you don't, we're just going to stay at level 2 forever. And it's just, you know, so you have to be like, Bethel, you're reacting badly right now. I'm like, oh, okay. Because sometimes I need that. Anyway, guys, can we do a self-evaluation, please? Please comment in the box below about how intimate you feel in terms of not just your marriage relationship. I don't want to know that. But like when you meet random people, or are you open to making friendships? Are you open to actually asking people how they're feeling or to telling people how you're feeling?
Let's have a conversation. Speak to you soon.